Good afternoon, sir. My question is to Amarjit, sir. So you have talked about the geopolitics. So what made you consider Manipur is not important in geopolitics? As we know that India is right now a presidency of G20. Even G20 summit has been done in Manipur itself. So everyone says that Manipur is going to play a huge role in South-South connection in order to become India as a leader of world. So what made you consider Manipur is not important in geopolitics? Thank you, sir.
Okay. Whether Manipur is not important or not, I'm not saying that Manipur has not formed any important role in India's geopolitics. I'm audible, no? Yes. I'm not saying that Manipur has not played any significant roles in India's geopolitics. I think that it is important. I was also talking about how these states, other than Manipur's, has become an important part of geopolitics of India's. I know for many of us, we think that Manipur has lessened its importance in India's geopolitics because Myanmar is in crisis. Military junta is there. And we were thinking that India has moved away from Manipur to Mizoram to Tripura to Chittagong Hill to Bay of Bengal. And many of us also think that whole geopolitics has shifted to Bay of Bengal. You must listen that right in, I think it was during the violence, Indian foreign policy when he was visiting Southeast Asia has again emphasized the trial, treaties and others, diplomatic relation with Myanmar also. I was thinking about, I was not saying that Manipur is not important. Manipur is still important. I was actually asking these questions, whether India has more other places, other states which have become more important to its geopolitics, and because of which it has to be. And we also note in Manipur, not all Manipur may not be significant to Indian geopolitics also. We also ask question that if not, is it some part of Manipur has become important in India's geopolitics? Not all. That is also a question that we have been asking. Yes, we always think that the Indo-Myanmar trade, that all that car rallies that from Manipur to Thailand that we were all dreaming has not been taken up. But it doesn't mean that Manipur is not significant. It's still significant. I was raising this question whether there are other factors like increasing importance of Bay of Bengal, the Chinese involved in Bay of Bengal, importance of Bangladesh in India's geopolitics, global geopolitics, importance of South China Sea, Indian Ocean region, has those factors, is it those factors come into play, however those factors come to play in not, in the sort of state not acting doing any proactive action to its violence, whether in the geopolitical calculation of India, whether those calculations have stopped India to sort of exercise its wits to end the violence in Manipur. These are the talks, these are speculation. These are all hypotheses. And I don't mean that Manipur is not. Manipur is important. If not all, certain part of Manipur has become more important in the same time. That's the point I was saying.
Hello, sir. Sir, my name is Rastam, and I'm a research scholar from Department of Physical Education. Sir, my question is to my question is to Bimo, sir. So you have said the nature of the government, both in the center and the state. Sir, we can't even hear what's going on, even in our own assembly, like one-day assembly and all. And it's very emotionally touched to the youth of this nation. So in such a havoc state, what, as per your suggestion, what will be the role and duties as a youth of the state of of the state of Manipur and of the state of youth of this nation, sir. Thank you.
Now, that's what I said. You need to ask critical questions. You see, if I give you an example from physics, Werner Heisenberg once said that it is not nature itself that we see, but nature is exposed to our method of questioning. Matlab ki whatever you know is contingent upon the kind of question that you raise. So I think the fundamental question that you must ask is, why is the state abandoned its responsibility? I've already told you that in Indian fundamental rights, which is enshrined in the Constitution, starts with Article 12 by defining what is state. Because all other right is an obligation imposed on the state to protect the life, freedom, dignity of the individuals that the state must ensure. Now, what has happened in Manipur is that the state is not ensuring that. We are defending, and the Indian national media is showing that villagers are guarding their own villages. Iska matlab kya hai? It is not the state which is protecting them, it is the citizens themselves. So everybody is fighting. And then there is also, unfortunately, an air of hatred all around, which will affect us in the end of the day. I think Amarjit has already hinted in his talk, normalization of violence. That if you hate someone, that becomes part of your personality as well. You understand? So too much of unacceptable hatred has also been in the air in the state. The fact that the state has not acted upon it, there's a complete abdication of responsibility of the state. I don't need to say this. It is there for everybody to see. The only thing is that we have not raised these questions. Ulta, we are asking cookies and maitais and cookies and maitais. It's a fantastic way of, there's also something that people ask. Whenever such kind of thing happen, then we must fundamentally ask, who gets benefit out of this violence? Then you will see the answers. When you have this statelessness, who's getting advantage of this one? Who's going to get benefit? Some people think that they are going to get separate administration. What is that Meiteis is expecting? No, I'm saying what this violence is going to pay them. Just think about it, this one, and then you will see. Why is it the Indian state is not stopping this? What is that Indian state has interest in this? ये कभी-कभी ये लगता है ना, there's Chanakya, Kautilya. Seemingly he had said something very interesting. That you try to convince some people. If you cannot, make them confused. I think that is what they know, that the people of Manipur cannot be convinced on certain political projects. So the best thing is that confuse them and create situation where those political projects can be presented as inevitable. You see, that's the kind of a policy that I sense. So, as a youth, two things is that ask critical questions and also try to see what is good for us as a society and what can be the implications of this conflict in our life in the days to come. That needs to be reflected upon very critically. And at the moment, I see an energy among the people. Every middle class who are otherwise not concerned about the state seems to feel something about it. I think that energy is there. I can see that. And if we don't channelize it properly, we will be losing an historical moment. For me, I have been saying this, every crisis is an opportunity for growth. And either at the level of the individual or at the level of the collective. It's a time that you will come to know your weaknesses and your strength. If you have a financial crisis, if you have a relationship crisis, whatever kind of crisis you have, how you respond to that will tell you what is your strength and what is your weakness. So this crisis for me is a moment where the people of the state, and particularly the Meiteis, must rethink about various categories through which they have been looking at it, and to reinvent themselves, fight back against our own weaknesses, don't hide it, and then augment and strengthen our strength and craft a future. So this crisis, you should not be intimidated or sort of bogged down by this. Take this crisis as an opportunity to reinvent ourselves for a better Manipur. I think that's what the youth should have in your mind.
Hello to the panelists. Very thank you for the wonderful session. And I have two questions for both the panelists. My first question is posed towards Professor Bimal, and my second question is posed towards Professor Amarjit. So the first question here is for Bimal sir. It's that I was just wondering, I am not a native of Manipur, I am a native of Assam, and I have been closely following the instances of Manipur, and it really concerns me. And I have traveled all the way from Delhi to attend this talk. And Bimal sir, I was just wondering that as an individual, I mean as, literate beings, I mean I would not call or consider myself educated, because the meaning of education, educated or, education is totally different. I would just consider myself as a literate. It is such a subjective term. So considering that, do we really need to, engage in a process of self-dialogue when we think, ethnically? How we think ethnically really matters, because at times we assert our identities as as belonging to a particular ethnic community. So I feel that as literates, as literates and as scholars or as students, as continuously engaging with such complex topics, so do you think that we really need this self-dialogue when we think ethnically, so that we come out of that negative zone of considering yourself to be very distinct, and that is a bit problematic, I feel, because what binds us is the red blood that flows inside us. It's not our identity. I mean, that's how I look at it. It's my personal view. So I would just like to know how you think about it. Thank you, sir. And my second question is towards Amarjit, sir. So, sir, you were mentioning about state. So when you were mentioning about state, and, I was wondering that we usually read about, talk about top-down approach, what the state has, delivered to us. And by going through your talk, I was thinking that why not focus, now, this is the time to focus on down to top approach, how we are, thinking, like whatever is we are receiving, how we are thinking about that, like are the things that we are receiving really, working for us? Like, for example, separate administration. I am against separate administration, because, considering this unity in diversity, you have to think that way. So does this really work? And talking about autonomous districts and all, I would not like to name the autonomous district now, but I have seen instances whereby there is an autonomous district and there has been no school in remote areas. So what kind of autonomous districts is this? Like, what kind of empowerment is this? So yeah, so I would like to know more about this, how you view about this. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Lukumani. This is my student, all the way coming from JNU to Chandigarh. Anyway, thanks for your questions. On your first question that you asked to be more, dialogue with the self. Even this is the paper which I wrote for the Kukichin peoples. And there was a dialogue with the self, and so I was just remembering how we need to engage with dialogue with the self. And of course, community has been in dialogue with the self, while community contests each other. But somewhere that dialogue with ourselves has not given much space. Our dialogue has been somewhere, I think, hijacked. I would like to take this opportunity to say about this dialogue, then I will come to autonomy. While I was looking at the Kuki-Chin Jaw people across Manipur, Mizoram, and Chin Hills, and Kuki-Chin peoples have been searching for the names, for common name and common nomenclatures and common identity. They never able to come to that common name, common identity. Many people think this is not, some people, right? Or the Gangte will say, Kuki-Chin people are the prisoner of themselves. They are not able to arrive to a common identities. I differ with that. The fact that they are not able to come to common identities and squeeze everyone into one. The fact that they have been negotiating, talking each other across clans, dialect, tribes, and sub-tribe communities among the Kuki-Chin people was a very positive factor in an age when everyone try to squeeze themselves, try to always look for singular identities or singular nationality. I thought there was a dialogue. Look at the two texts, one written by T. Goggins about Joe homeland. Look, another text on Jalingam. You'll find the dialogue between these two texts. One still talks about incomplete nations. There's a nation, but people still yet to accept it. People are engaging with itself. Whereas in Jalingam, it's already like we already have a nation, we already agreed it, we must fight for it. Look at these two peoples. They have been dialogue each others. I love the way, for instance, we must not forget to look at some of us Kuki-Chin Jaw scholars. Oza Kamket Tangs, who wrote about the pieties across India and Myanmar borders. Oza Gangte, who wrote about the Kukis. Oza Gangte talks about Manipur as a national entity. Oza Gangte talks about how Kuki-Chins were part of this Manipuri self. Oza Kamket Tang talks about the pieties of Indian pieties and the Myanmar pieties and how differentiate between the citizens. They're having dialogue with ourselves among the communities. Somewhere that dialogue has either stopped or not given much space. Yes, we must have dialogue with ourselves. Not only to the point that Bimol was saying that we must also be critique of ourselves. Both the communities, they must have critique for ourselves. I think that'll also open the window for shared destiny or common reality between it. Once we look to yourself, when we look to yourself, you will also look to the world. On the question of why not we focus on how we receive, if you look at the top-down process. Yes, we must be looking at how we receive things. I would not say it's not about top-down process, how state is no more functioning with the top-down approach, not complete top-down process, but where you'll find the top is in the down. There's already top, center in the periphery, people says that. Many people become part of it, maybe because of development process, maybe because of various kind of schemes for people. I would say state and communities, core and periphery, which used to say also come together. But yet it's true that how we are receiving things, how we become part of the state making, our nation building, we must critique ourselves, we must engage ourselves. I understand that how, for instance, let's take about Article 241, 244 Clause 1, Clause 2, 244A, all refers to administration of tribal areas in Indian Constitution. Reading all this Constitution, reading all this provision which has come in how it becomes part of the constitutions. It becomes part of the Constitution as a sort of accommodation and integration of ethnic diversities. And accommodation and integration of diversities, has it resolved the problems? Has 6 resolved the problem of ethnic issues? Has it able to completely integrate the peoples to the heart and mind of the nations? Or has it able to resolve differences that we are seeing among ethnic communities? While we assert our identity through the Constitution provisions, we must also engage ourselves. What are things we are receiving it? we don't just receive, we reflect on that. We must tactically, we must skillfully use constitutional provisions. If there are lapses or loopholes, we must identify it. We can ask for amendment. We can, of course, ask for amendment. We can ask for certain kind of new reforms and legislation, new legislations. We must reflect on what we have been receiving. And of course, you know, when we say what we receive, we talk about state, how we understand state. If you look at the history of Northeast India, our community in Manipur, we dislike state as much as we like state. We love and hate states. In the love and hate relation with the state, we are also being configured. We have been being set ourselves. Yes, we must reflect on what we receive. We must reflect because we must see the constitutional mechanism and provision, how that can work in terms of having a good relation among the communities, how that may play hurdles in inter-community relationship, and how we can renegotiate and re-debate our constitution provision if it is not empowering the people, if it is not helping the marginalized section of people to fully address problems. So we must reflect on what we are receiving. And I think we are not just merely receiving. We are also not receiving. We are not just receiving. We are not just receiver. We are also become the active claimants, active claimants of various identity and autonomy. I have said that autonomous districts, I can't deny, we can't say we should not have autonomy. But we must declare how much autonomous region, how much autonomy can a region afford? How much of autonomous, that also based on groups and corporates, can a society offer? Tell me how many autonomous state or how many autonomous region can solve human problems, basic socioeconomic problems. I think it's time to re-debate ourselves existing autonomous mechanism, autonomy mechanism. Of course, by not denying the autonomy that each of us should have. We must have autonomy. Autonomous should be at various levels. Giving autonomy to district or community is not even, if it is all granted. Community need to be open enough. There's need autonomy. Women's need autonomy. Women's need autonomy. Lesser tribe or community, tribal community need autonomy. We need autonomy to question the political representative. We need autonomy to question the type of quality of life we are having. We need autonomy to question where has the money gone. We need to make any representative or accountables. We need autonomy to question various state and non-state actors on matters that concerning the welfare of peoples. We need various kind of autonomy, but we must also be time to discuss ethnic-based autonomy, or what you call concessional models. We need to debate it. I know many people suggest it's an effective measure as a way out to solve a problem, but examples are not showing in the good directions. We must debate on that. Thank you very much.
See, internal debate and self-requirement to move out of the ethnic is what is essential in any process. That's why there are two things involved. When I speak, I don't have to deny that I'm a Meitei. Okay? In the name of humanity and humanism and neutrality, you don't have to do that. First, recognize that you're a Meitei, you're a Manipuri, you belong to that state. And then also realize how you feel. All these things are important. If you come from social science, then you will know there's something called reflexivity. So I know where I'm coming from, to constantly have a negotiation with yourself. And that is essential for you to have some clarity in life, where this is coming from. So that's why I said I am here as a Meitei, but when I speak, you will see that I talk about the imperial nostalgia that some Meitei suffer from. This can only come when you are able to have a negotiations, a critical appraisal of yourself. You know, you as a community, why do we think the way we think? There are a lot of things that I have written about my society, and I still insist, much of my intervention so far is, if you see that my comment will be more than 90% is on what we as Meitei ought to do, rather than criticizing or attacking the other communities. If you see in the last 4 months of whatever I've written, whatever I've spoken out, the undercurrent of my speech is primarily my own community. Sharing, expressing what we're going through, and what should we do about it, and also realize what are our weaknesses. I have been mentioning that. I have written this for years on. See, I tell you, around 2003-04, I've started writing, and you can see some of my writings on that. I have called the way, say, Manipur history is written is nothing but monochromatic history. It's not only state-centric, but it is also a Meitei-centric way of writing history. So you should have alternative ways of writing history. If you're a history student, you will know, for instance, what the subaltern historians are saying. That you should be able to recover some of this history. But unfortunately, some of the intellectuals and academics become more of a propagandists and headmongers in this conflict. You can see telling lies. You said something in one newspaper article, and then after a few weeks, you write something else. And then you are a professor of a university, and your hatred for Meiteis is so much that it flows out from your argument. And that, I think, is a lack of honesty. It is both intellectual lack of honesty as well as a human being. And it's okay. I can understand that some intellectuals become the spokespersons for a particular political project is well and good. So, I mean, I need to contest, as Amarjit is saying, for instance, what is this autonomy all about? Does it pay? What the experiences of autonomy in India is like? How the 6th schedule function in Meghalaya? How is the Bodo Autonomous Council functions? You can see whether what was expected of that institution, whether it is functioning or not. And in globally also, if you see, he cited some of them, criticism against the consultational model on an identity base. You will create another majority within the same thing, you know. So ultimately, what kind of principle you should follow? If it is autonomy, I am all for decentralizations. I have no doubt about that, but it has to be or, you know, possibly in all layers of the state structure, it has to be done. It cannot be decentralized to the whims and fancies of certain exclusivist sectarian ideology, some disintegrationist sectarian ideology. It's a bad logic. You know, that is where you are saying about one's too obsessed with one's own ethnic group or tribal, you don't have the capacity to live with others. And in human existence, if you lose your capacity to live with others, that essentially you mean that you are working against the basic essence of human being. We are a relational being. It doesn't make sense, you know, Kukis and Meiteis can't live together. Is it okay if in this university that no Kuki student is going to join the Panjab University because there are Meitei faculty members here? Is it that the Kukis will not follow orders from Meitei army officers? Or is it that you can't join a company if there is a Meitei? This is nonsense. I know you should. It's okay, you can fight. There can be differences. You don't need to flatten society. I'm all for differences. And you should celebrate it. But it should not lead to detrimental developments on the way we exist in this world of globalized world, and a very exclusivist, disintegrationist, sectarian ideology. I don't support that. For me, as that's why when I take the stand, of course it will hurt the community or those who follow that ideology. That's inevitable. But this is an opportunity for dialogue. I said, this is not done. what you wanted to achieve with separate administration will not work. It can be done other way around. And what are the other common factors between you and me that we should work together? And this is the kind of attitude that you should have it. Although, unfortunately, some of the utterances is completely unacceptable, and it will harm, not Meiteis. It will harm these people as well. Believe me. You can't have this. Once you have this hatred and sectarian ideology deep inside you, it becomes the defining characteristic of yourself. So I think that self-interrogation is important, that one should move out of it. I believe that at least among the Meiteis, we also have a tough time. You know, when I say Meiteis have suffered from imperial nostalgia, it may not be a music to some of the Meiteis. When I say too much ethnocentrism among the Meiteis is bad, not only for us, but for the state of Manipur, I dare to say that. The important question is, you don't get to see this from many other communities, especially right now who are involved in this conflict. So you're right. I wish that more of us, cutting across community, has this capacity to have a interrogation about their own stand and think beyond it. Right now, emotionally so charged, I can understand some of them are quiet. But I think the development is much more than these communities. For me, the number one thing in my focus is the Indian state. Why is it the Indian state is allowing this to happen for so long? Why there is a confusion among these who is in charge of the state? And why why this government of India, Prime Minister is silent for so long? If they wanted to do it, and why is that some media houses in the so-called national level become partisan in their approach? I can understand people getting biased back home in Manipur, but what stake do they have it here? Rather than dousing the flame, they're fueling this conflict. I have said this in my interviews before as well. So unfortunately, the legacy still continues. The latest one to hit me hard is the Editor Guild of India's report. I don't know whether they're embarrassed or not. When you've been, the inaccuracies and factual mistakes have been pointed out, you should have the honesty and modesty to accept, the humility to accept that we made mistakes. But I don't see that coming in still. That's very unfortunate. That these are some of the things that critical self-appraisal is required by the Indian media and the so-called mainstream population in this country. Ye tamasa nahi hai. This is not a tamasa to be watched on television. You know, unfortunately, I must tell you this also today. I may have said, irreconcilable differences. This is a word that you get to hear, right? As in the deep distrust among these communities. I'm sorry to say this, but that was what the colonial forces have said about the Hindus and Muslims in South Asia. These people are inherently antagonistic to each other, irreconcilable communities. The separation is the only option kind of thing. If the Indians have problem with that assessment as a colonial framing, and we should avoid doing the same thing when it comes to, there is nothing inevitable, natural about the animosity among the people in the state. This is created and manufactured.
Due to time constraint, we have time for just one question, please.
Good evening, sir. Actually, my name is Benazir Sana Yungkhaibam, and I am the president of the Student Council of MDAC College. I have come here with lots of my friends, and I just have a personal question, and I don't think it will be, I was asking if it would be critical or not, but to me it's a personal question. So I've been wondering that, I've been asking myself a lot of questions like, do we need a mediator to act as a, to solve the problem between the two communities. Until now, I cannot name even a single person who's able to make the solution to be like to both the communities to be calmed down. And I've been asking her questions like, is there a need of a leader that can have the charismatic personality to even influence the national government? Until now, my answer has not been answered. So I just want sir to give me the answer. Do we really need a mediator, or do we really need a leader? And if it comes out, will he be able to solve the problem? This is the thing. Thank you, sir.
If some part of the country has a problem like the way Manipur is, what should the Indian state do? Anywhere in this country, इस तरह का कुछ घटना हुआ, मान लो, it happens anywhere in this country, what would the government of India do? What is that the government of that state will do? If the state is not functioning, what the government of India will do? What are the provisions in the constitutions? That's what you need to know. I don't think it's about the mediator as such. I think the state must take care of itself. Insofar as Manipur is a part of the Indian Union, the Indian state must take care of itself. So taking care of Manipur is taking care of itself. The moment you started looking as if it is a foreign country, and you have terms like buffer zones, shifting populations, the Indian army, Indian security forces are not doing peacekeeping duty in a foreign country. There are, and they should carry out their responsibility as a state should do, taking care of itself. So taking care of the crisis in Manipur is the sole responsibility of the Indian state. I have no doubt about this. So I don't think there is a need for a mediator as such. But the Indian state can think about various ways, and I have suggested one, break the ice, bring these MLAs to sit together. कम से कम थेरेपिस्ट के सामने जो है ना मियाँ बीबी जो झगड़ा होता है, do you force them to sit and talk at least? And that's what I said. If the Prime Ministers call these BJP MLAs from the state of Manipur, how many of you believe that some will not come? Tell me very honestly, how many of you really think that if the Prime Ministers call Kuki ho ya Naga ho, Maite ho, jo bhi ho, BJP के सब MLA इधर आ जाओ मेरे साथ, बातचीत करना है, ये क्या चल रहा है? If the Prime Minister does like this, do you think that some will say that मैं नहीं बैठूंगा उसके साथ? Tell me. See? क्यों नहीं करते ये? If you want to put up a mediator, then you think that once you do that at the level of the political, you have a meeting with the security forces and there are lacunas in this, there are armed groups. How to handle them? इतने साल से आपने इस्तेमाल करके रखा हुआ है some groups. We all know. Many of these groups are part of counterinsurgency mechanisms. Many people have pointed it out. ये पहली बात सुन रहे हो? You can hear, even in Karan Thapa's interview, Bablu Laitongam, the well-known human rights activist, said, these groups have been used as a counterinsurgency tools, first against the Nagas, second against the Meiteis. Think about it. It's not the government of India cannot do anything. Indian government is not bechara, bhai. It's not a helpless third world country. It's one of the emerging powers in this globe, and you can't even handle your backyard. You global leader बनने जाओगे आप? I mean, you need to ask these fundamental questions. या सीधे सी बोलो कि it doesn't matter. मणिपुर मरो, डूबो, कुछ लेना देना नहीं. I would be happy if you dare to say that also. कम से कम clarity तो आएगा ना दिमाग में कि whether you really care or not. तो बोलो, सीधे सी बात है.
Just one question.
Okay, just last question. This is not exactly a question. I just want to compliment Professor Pimoa. It's okay. I am Mr. Shaiza. I'm from Manipur. I'm a Naga from Ukhrul district. So I'm very much a stakeholder in this whole messy situation. Yes, it is very encouraging to admit one's own mistakes. And the model, the approach that you have utilized today is indeed the right step in the right direction. I would, taking this opportunity, appeal my Mayday brethren to follow this measured and matured approach in dealing with this crisis, not the other way around. In social media, I have come across someone just saying, Gogi Shaktu. That is not the right approach to do at this moment. This is time when we have to coolly sit down and appeal to the other community, even if they appear to be very adamant. And this approach, I'm sure, would bear fruit. If the government has denied us, if they have ignored us, we have our own role to play. And me as a Naga has my own role to play. I cannot remain a silent spectator anymore. If two brothers are fighting in the family, the whole family equation is disturbed. And I am facing the same crisis over and over again. As far as this conflict is concerned, perhaps before you, I had been victimized before. The Kuki-Naga conflict precedes this one. So I've been a victim of this, but I hold no grudge against my Kuki brethren. What is lacking, what I observe is that this kind of discourse, mature discourse, is not forthcoming from the other side. Whether it is my ignorance, I don't know. But at least from the Mayday community, this has been going on. And I urge you to continue doing this in a very mature manner so that somewhere or the other, there will be a solution out for our community. We can't change our neighbors. We have to live with it, whether we like it or not. So let us work together for the common cause of everyone. That's it. Thank you.
Sir, since we are discussing on the problem and the root cause of the violence in Manipur, I just want to highlight one very peculiar and very particular things that is happening in Manipur since from a time immemorial. As we are Manipuri, and I think so many non-Manipuri are also here, we are so used to this term called economic blockade. So, economic blockade on the highways. So I think many of the non-Manipuris might have not known this, but we are very used to it. And we didn't even have we never bother and cared about the impact of the economic blockade since we are very used to it. So my question is that, sir, if you are a Chanakya to this present government, what kind of permanent solution will you suggest the government to bring the permanent solution to this economic blockade? Because this has created a huge, huge impact to our lives. And Manipur is such a backward state. I'm saying again, it's such a backward state. If you happen to check the records of the BPL families who are under the below poverty line, they are very huge. They're very huge. They are saying they Meitei are very advanced community and all. I'm a Meitei myself. I live in Imphal. There are so many Meitei living in my community, in my area. Those in Imphal, they are living in a very bad condition. They are living in a very poor condition. Recently, an inmates from one of the relief camp I think they are from Kangpupi and they are settled in somewhere in the Imphal. The inmates told that though our houses are being burnt and my shops have been completely burnt, I find myself that there is a little, relief that I don't have to pay taxes to the illegal taxes. That some sections of the community, I must say those illegal insurgent groups or the cookie militants, I should not have named them, but obviously it's the clash between the two communities, I have to put it out. So that particular person has said that I find a little relief that I don't have to pay taxes like 2,000 to 3,000 per month, though I'm a poor myself, that I belong to a poor family myself. So is there any way out? So this is my ultimate questions to you, to Professor Bimal or the Professor Amarjit. Either of you can answer this. Thank you.
I think you have asked, you must remove. If you're asking me as a Chanakya, then I'll say make them confused and make sure that you don't leave your chair. Remain as Mantri throughout your life. But if I'm not a Chanakya, then I said it's a state responsibility to take care of the national highway is the responsibility of the union government. And then secondly, in our civil society, this is a militaristic thinking. You block the highway, you trouble them, supply line khatam kar lo, and that kind of a thinking. It's inflicting yourself. At the end of the day, you are creating an estranged relationship with your neighbors and your own family members, to use that term. It doesn't help. You know, you are getting, by inflicting yourself pain, you don't realize that you are inflicting pain on others. You're only inviting him or her to think in a similar line. So you will create complicated pictures. So I know blockade has been a regular feature of our life. It's inflicting ourselves. Man, this is a tool of, not of the courageous people, it's a tool of the weak. You know, and with due respect to women, this is what the women do, nakhra to husband. मैं खाना नहीं खाऊंगा, है ना, मैं काटूंगा अपने आप को. Inflicting yourself just to get attention of the others, which is not done. If you're courageous, you will not do like that. क्यों नहीं खाऊंगे खाना? Why should I hurt myself? You know. So I think this blockade is a weapon of the weak. It's not normally done. So I think we can look at that blockade part. To my mind, is again, we know by and large, those of you in social sciences, it's a gold mine if you want to study the nature of the state and how it functions and manifests in the India's northeast, and do a comparative study of how the Indian state behaved in UP, Bihar, or rest of the country. It's an interesting unfolding nature of the Indian state. Indian state, you will begin to see more like Bhagwan with different groups, different images, and self gets reflected in different areas. In Northeast, they reflect an image which is less than desirable throughout our history, last 50, 60 years of our life or more. People like me who landed up in the so-called mainstream, we've been here, and at least Amarjit is slightly younger. We've been here in this so-called national mainstream in academic institution for almost 30 years as a faculty. Sin. So we started speaking up. You know, mainstream is where my father used to go for education in the late 50s and early 60s. And my generation are here to teach people from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to Nagaland. That's a change in the way we do it. See, even in Panjab University, you have faculty from our state. JNU, we have at least what, 14, 15 of us? Itna chota sa state hai, but we have quite a number. In fact, we are the largest if you compare with the rest of the states in the India's northeast. I heard that there are more than 200 teachers in Delhi University, only from Manipur, both the scheduled tribe and general people. We are doing good in some sense, but we also need to change ourselves a lot. We have a lot of parochial outlooks and small minds, like we fight. That's why I said the entire Northeast will be swept by this neo-liberal political economy. I am scared of heavy militarization of that place in the evolving geopolitics of this area, the realignment between India, Israel, and United States vis-a-vis with China. I have been saying this, people call me those days alarmists, but I'm more and more convinced now that the North is becoming another Cebu. There's a place in Philippines where the American military base is there, or an Okinawa kind of a thing in Japan, where military bases are there for strategic purpose. If Northeast turns out to be like that, whether you are a Naga or a Kuki or a Khasi or a Homia, I was about to use an English word, bad word, we'll be all in a bad shape if that thing happens in the days to come. I think we should be very careful. Why should we waste our energy on use this thing? Think big. There's a greater challenge which is common for all of us. And this kind of ethnic crisis is draining our energies and our capacity to face a larger challenge which is sweeping across the region. I think that is important for us not to forget it.
Good evening, Professor Amarjeet and Professor Koijam. I'm Sharmili. I am a faculty here in Panjab University. I teach engineering. So most of my friends are watching this program live, and they have a lot of questions addressed to both of you. But I'm just going to focus on one question that needs our immediate attention, and that question is addressed to Professor Koijam. I'll just read out a message that was sent by my friend. I'll just read out his message. Now that the Supreme Court of India has absolved the Editors Guild of India by saying that it was freedom of expression, and the onus now is on us to prove that the news report has helped in inciting more violence, what do we do now? We just leave it or we contest it?
Ma'am, please repeat.
Should I repeat the question?
No, I got it. You know, I don't know whether I should say this. I was in touch with one of them before they visited. And there's a team of us who have been doing analysis of the national newspaper. It's a painstaking work. We're using theories and methods from media studies, trying to see how the national media have reported. And when I share with one of them, they said, you know, they also like to have a look at our report and so on. Initially, I was very happy when they said newspaper media should not be part of the information war. This is what the Editor Guild of India has, the press release. We have the document that the media should not be part of the information war. I think, unfortunately, EZI has become an example of what it wanted to avoid. As simple as that. Whether they provoke, the Supreme Court is taking a legal viewpoint in the sense that whether what they have published is sort of creating law and order issues, inciting problem on the ground. That's a very different questions, the legal questions. The other side of the question is, are you doing justice to your intended mandate? Or you just become part of the information war? Because some of the factual things which have come up now from the official document on forests, the way it is written, if I were in their place, I would have honestly accepted with humility that yes, we made mistakes. You publish a photo of a forest office being burned down as a house of a cookie, and then you suddenly change it into, by removing cookie, house being burned. It doesn't make sense. Anybody who knows media study will know why a particular framing is done, how framing influences the data or the information you give in a report. Like, for example, the discourse has been wrongly framed in terms of minority Christians, minority tribal, instead of looking at it as a larger, and some people made us so confused saying that this is nothing to do with insurgency. We forget that Manipur is a deeply armed groups. Isliye to manifestation is different, no? Whether it is from the valley or it is everybody is armed. So why is it so? Because it is an area of armed conflict reasons. The people are armed like this. So how can you negate that? There's bound to have an, armed movements or armed insurgencies implication in the whole affairs. That's what, unfortunately, I'm still saying it, that I'm very intrigued that why this violence has been going on, why the Indian state has not been able to stop it, or is it, I have said it many times, this inaction of the Indian state itself is an action that gets implicated in the violence. I have said this, I'm repeating it here again. The inaction of the Indian state, its inability to stop the violence itself is an action implicated in this crisis. I have no doubt about it, that the question is, why? Why is the Indian state doing like this? Is it that you can't handle? Oh, bahut mar jayega, some people told me. I said, it's a threat. It's an excuse by intimidating me. Say, Lord mar jayega. Main to kahunga bhi, kyun marega? Is it inevitable? Kab se? I mean, there are lots of things. So we should be asking this question. I think instead of blaming communities, number one, I'm saying that the communities themselves have to be also reflect on themselves. There are a lot of things, undesirable things. Hate has been going on, it's been normalized in some sense. But the primary thing that we all must be asking is the abdication of the role of the state. I think that's important for us not to forget. So I think this press is a similar kind of thing. Has the editor guild has abdicated its responsibility? And to my mind, as I said, they have become the example of what they appeal the media not to be part of the information war. I get a feeling that they have become part of the information war. It's very clear from that report.
I want to say something on this context. Somewhere our happiness and sadness is also being playing out. The day we find reports supporting us, many of us are happy. The next day we start attacking us, we are sad. Somewhere during the course of violence, several report has actually played with our own feelings and emotions. And we have been traumatized day by day. On the editor guilds of India, the Supreme Court has taken initiatives. We must wait for that. Several SITs have been formed at several levels. And I was also for looking several reports with clear minds. There was one report, among all reports, that it's not that we don't find some report reasonable. There was a report which says that we must acknowledge there are people on both sides who have good wisdoms, ready to share and acknowledge our pains and suffering. There are reports which really take careful that we should not engage it in. And there are reports which I find very interesting, some reports, sensible reports, right? We should be moving for community enhancing approach toward the peace rather than community divided approaches. Yes, we were hoping for the guilds of India, both of us were discussing around this time, that they have set certain kind of ethical standards. Now they have to answer themselves with the same ethical standards. And we know how things, and I was also thinking about several issues which can be taken in very right directions. One of the issues which I missed to say was on the issues of forests, for instance, on the reserve and protected areas and issues of evictions. This can be discussed taking into various, even including Supreme Court judgment on right of the forest dwellers. And this can be taken like Forest Right Act, which Editor Guild of India didn't spend much time, I think, or they don't care to read all details. They could have actually give a clear direction how rights of the forest dwellers, the tribes, the forest dwelling people can be look at it. including the process of eviction also. One Forest Conservation Act allows certain areas, which is the property of the state, or from the product of its state, it has state has a command, or which is so state can announce protected areas under the Section 28, Clause 1 of the Forest Conservation Act. Now, the Forest Right Act says, on the other hand, that every forest dweller who have been there for generations and who have lived with it, their records, their land records, their right need to be, process of identifying their rights and record need to be completed first before they are being evicted. For those people who have been lived for generations. There are legal issues in between these two acts. Many a time Forest Right Act does not come into rescues of many tribal people in the hill when it comes to land resource extractions. There are issues or legal issues. Now, Supreme Court has come up, also give the right that people who have been victims of eviction certainly have the right to claim for it. There are procedures to it. In fact, in the beginning, in the case Sonjang Village in Chochambar Kopong area, when protected areas, issues of protected area announcement, KNO was actually raising these issues in the court of law. So there are legal issues. There are channels to fight for the rights of the evicted people. But it would be wrong to reduce eviction as issues of one communities. Already, I think the chief principal conservators of Manipur Forest Department have come out with that, which was published in NDTV, that how eviction has been occurring for the last 1-2 years. And I have seen eviction myself. There are many unreported evictions. I have seen an eviction in Loktak, wetland area. I have seen eviction in Kakching. I have seen eviction in Chaukrul. I have seen eviction in Senapati. If evictions is the issue, if the right of the forest dweller people is the issue, there are channels to fight it out. There are a lot of people who work for it. Look at the national land rights activist writings. There are many data in the public domains. There are many ways to fight it. Supreme Court themselves says that when you evict, there are certain record to be cited. But there's also other act which says that it can be all the surveys and all the process can be done later on also. There are legal issues to be discussed. So when ECI, Editor Guild of India, reports such kind of issue, they must take care about the debate which has been going on for a long time. And who are taking initiative to address that? Many of us, I said, when we fight for the right of the forest dwellers and forest dependent people, I must take just opportunities. I have been working with the issues of forests and forest dependent people in the eastern side of the Impal, in the foothill of the Namaiching Hills. When this initiative was taken for Culture University at the foothill, many Métis villagers questioned it because it disturbs that relationship they have with the mountain area, the foothill areas. There have been rituals, and the mountains have been part of the community rituals. So it's not about tribe only. It's not about forest dweller, but also forest dependent peoples. So this debate can be directed in a good direction. It can have people in the media, people who are intellectual should give a good direction to it. So there are rooms to fight it out. There are a lot of things to be cleared out. And on many occasions, Forest Right Act 2006 is not been taken into consider by the own union laws. Many acts of union economic policies or economic activities, be it infrastructure projects or extractions, they are exempted from application of Forest Right Act. For instance, so there are legal issues. So the right of the forest dwellers can be discussed in a better way. So this thing could have been brought into pictures. It also includes that there's commissions which come out with on the issues of so and so many hills have become part of the valley. And this has become a concern. Where was these people who we come up with this when so many villages were submerged by hydel power projects? Where were these people when so many scheduled tribe communities are being, their right has been, their own agricultural land has been, they have been displaced? Where were these people when so many people are fighting for their compensations. Suddenly somebody comes, some people comes, and started interested in issues. So we, instead, other than receiving this report, we should be engaging. Each of us should be engaging with the report and give a good direction to it. There are ways to do it. I'm for the right of the people. There are ways to do it, but it cannot be discussed. And you know, this crisis of forest, this crisis resource is also the very good time for us to build a common future of Manipur. People should come together and share the concern. There are common concern, common interests, common right that we can fight. And there are enough opportunity to come out from our own ethnic enclosure and start connecting each other on issues of forest, on issues of land and resources. There are enough spaces. There already is space. There are already spaces. We need to give more. We need to empower ourselves to those common spaces. It looks like those space has been taken a backseat at the moment. They have lost it's what you call it's space at this moment. There are space to do it. There are good ways to do it. Thank you very much.